Welcome in, everybody, to the Saints Insider Podcast postgame show for October the 15th. The Saints lose today 20-13 to the Houston Texans. I'm Zach Ewing, live here from NRG Stadium in Houston, where the Saints, quite frankly, should have won this game. No other way to put that. They lost 20-13. Doesn't seem like a particularly close game, but despite the fact that they had the ball at the Texans 24 with a minute to go, and a chance to tie this game and send it to overtime or even go for two and win. They had multiple chances earlier in the game to make this a closer game or to tie it. Never cashed in on any of them. We're talking double-digit plays inside the Texans' 30-yard line, down just 7 points and not able to get the job done on offense. And so the Saints fall to the Texans 20-13. They fall to 3-3 on the season. And you will actually see the Saints. They're emerging from their locker room and walking right behind me here as they go over to their bus back to, I assume they're going to just fly straight back, bus to the airport and fly straight back. So we will talk about the Saints' offensive failures, particularly in the red zone. We'll talk about the defense didn't play a great first half, played a much better second half. It wasn't enough. We'll look at the path going forward, which starts in just 4 days. The Saints play the Jacksonville Jaguars on Thursday night. And talk about some injury updates as well. Probably the biggest one, James Hurst, who started at left tackle today. He left this game, got rolled up on his ankle in the first half, did not return. And really, I don't think there's even a prayer he plays on Thursday night. I just saw James walk by on crutches and a walking boot on that left ankle. So just almost zero chance he was able to play Thursday night and maybe out multiple weeks. And so the Saints tried to change up their offensive line this week and weren't able to really do that for longer than about a quarter because James Hurst gets hurt. And then later in the game, in the fourth quarter, Ryan Ramczyk left the game with a concussion. And the concussion protocol in the NFL is such now that he probably will not be able to play Thursday night. And so they will be facing the Jacksonville Jaguars with that makeshift offensive line. So just a lot to talk about here on the Saints Insider Postgame Show. We'll also be joined in just a few minutes by Luke Johnson and Rod Walker live from the Saints locker room here at NRG Stadium. And I did see one quote. Derek Carr said he was livid. And that's a quote after the game, needed some time to calm down. He did walk by. He went to junior high and 3 years of high school here in Houston and saw some friends on the field and had a smile on his face as he greeted those friends. So has calmed down a little bit, but he said he's very upset after the game. We have a comment coming in from Fafael. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name. It says PC needs to be gone. That's Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator. Look, we'll talk about that. The Saints gained 430 yards in this game. It was by far their most gained all year. I think they had 351 against the Titans in week one was their previous high. So 80 yards higher today, but it was all between the 20s. Not able to do anything once they got into that red zone. 7 trips inside the Houston Texans 40-yard line, and they wind up with 13 points. So special teams not off the hook either. Blake Grupe missed 2 field goals, including a 29-yarder early in the fourth quarter, barely longer than an extra point. And in fact, I think it might be a yard shorter than an extra point. Yeah, 29 yards. And he misses that. Had he hit that, and you can't really, transitive property, what-if game, butterfly effect, all that. If he hits that, it's 20-16. Saints got back down inside the Texans 30 with about 5 minutes to go, went for it on fourth down and were stopped. If it's 20-16, do they still go for it on fourth down, or do they kick another field goal, make it 20-19, and then when they get down with a minute to go, another field goal wins it, and they win this game 22-20. Again, what if maybe they go for it on fourth down there anyway, with 5 minutes to go? Maybe the Texans play things differently on their side, either offensively or defensively. So you can't really play that game, but certainly a frustrating one on all sides for the New Orleans Saints. And keep those comments and questions coming. I'm getting them here on my phone as we Jacques says fire Allen. So not just Pete Carmichael, but Dennis Allen. I mean, look, the Saints are 3-3. We'll talk about moving forward a little bit later, but 3-3 is not a disaster. It's not where you want to be. They faced the weakest schedule in the NFL through 6 weeks, so you can't say 3-3 is good. But there's still an opportunity for this team to get on a roll. They have played 4 of their 6 games on the road, so they'll get back to the Superdome. They do have to play better. I mean, that's the thing. I don't think you're going to see Dennis Allen on the hot seat just yet. But if they're 8-8 down the road against an easy schedule and they get buried in the NFC South, then I think Dennis Allen, I think that conversation needs to be had. So we'll see what happens. Right now, the Saints 3-3 and going to Jacksonville, or facing Jacksonville at home on Thursday night at the Superdome. Want to remind you that our Saints Insider post-game show is brought to you by Tulane Doctors. When it comes to healthcare, choose a partner that sets the standard. Tulane Doctors are bringing the medicine of tomorrow to the Gulf South today. Find your physician at TulaneDoctors.com. So we're here post-game live at NRG Stadium in Houston. Zach Ewing with you from NOLA.com. This is the Saints Insider post-game show. Our final score, the Houston Texans 20, the New Orleans Saints 13. And, just kind of going through some of the frustrations. Derek Carr, believe it or not, finished this game with 353 yards. By far his best game as a Saint. Made some big throws. His receivers made some big plays. I mean, Derek underthrew a deep ball in the fourth quarter that Rashid Shaheed went up and got and set up one of those red zone opportunities, the one with about 5 minutes left. The Saints eventually fail on fourth down, a pass to the flat to Alvin Kamara that ended up a yard short. He gets pushed out of bounds just a yard shy of that first down. And then they get back down there with about a minute to go and one timeout, not quite in the red zone, but at the Texans 24. And I thought it was interesting. There's actually, I think, 43 seconds left, and the Saints had to burn a timeout on the previous series. So they didn't have a lot of time, but I did find it interesting. They essentially took 4 shots at the end zone from the 24. The last pass, which was actually intercepted by the Texans, was right at the 2-yard line, so not quite to the end zone. But they did have time to maybe try to lop off half of that distance, try to get a completion to the 12 or the 10, call your timeout or get up and spike the ball. And then that idea of throwing a pass into the end zone, finding somebody open becomes a little bit easier. But as it is, they threw deep 4 times from the 24, and none of them really ever felt like they were close to being completed. Derek Carr was under pressure. Receivers were covered. He was throwing the ball away. Never at any point during those plays did it feel like, hey, the Saints have this one, and then they just didn't make a play. I mean, they never really even had an opportunity to do that. So a pretty disappointing finish, a very disappointing finish if we're being honest. We'll go through some of the play-by-play and some of the stats. As I said, Derek Carr finishes with 353 yards passing. The Saints as a team finished with 430 yards. The Houston Texans just 297. The Texans, I believe, had only 59 yards in the second half, if my math is right. They had 238 in the first half. That leaves just 59 yards for the second half. All they did in the second half was get 1 field goal, the Houston Texans. That's all they did. So this defense had some struggles in the first half, but absolutely played well enough to win this game in the second half. And, the offense gets in field goal range several times, but you either need to make those field goals, which Blake Grupe didn't do, missing a 29-yarder, or you need to get the ball in the end zone, which the offense didn't do. Several chances. As I said, 7 trips inside the Houston 40-yard line in this game, and just 1 touchdown and 2 field goals to show for it. And the touchdown came from 34 yards out in the first half, Derek Carr to Rashid Shaheed. And so that wasn't even a red zone play. Saints in the red zone were officially 0 for 3, and then count the fourth one. That was the last possession of the game. Saints got as far as the 24. It didn't count as a red zone, but they do get that down. Scoring open in this one, C.J. Stroud, the Texans key, the number 2 pick. He gets a 1-yard touchdown pass to Dalton Schultz, the tight end, with 3:41 to go in the first quarter. Saints answered that quickly. That was the Carr to Shaheed 34-yard strike for a 7-7 score. That was with 13 seconds left in the first quarter. From there, the Texans score the next 2 times. Kai Fairburn, a 24-yard field goal with 10:28 to go in the second quarter to make it 10-7. And then on a third down play, a big third and goal play, C.J. Stroud finds Robert Woods for 6 yards for a touchdown and a 17-7 lead. That was with 2:56 left in the second quarter. Saints had a nice 2-minute drive at the end of the first half. They didn't get a touchdown, but they did get a Blake Grupe 48-yard field goal, make it 17-10. Set up a chance for them to get 2 for 1. They got the ball to start the second half as well, but couldn't do anything with it there. Eventually, the Texans extend that lead to 20-10. Kai Fairburn, 7:01 left in the third quarter, made it 20-10. Groupie answers with 2:17 left in the third quarter to make it 20-13. And then no more scoring from that point. As we said, Groupie misses the 29-yarder in the fourth quarter. Saints go for it on fourth down on the next series, don't get it. And then on the final series of the game, they get down inside the 25 again. And Brian asks, why not throw down the middle instead of the sideline? It's a good question. Obviously, you have short time. They had 43 seconds and one timeout. I don't think you could do that a lot. But as I said a few minutes ago, I like the idea of if the Texans are playing shell defense, pop one underneath for 12 or 15 yards, get yourself down to the 10-yard line, say, and either call your last timeout or go up and spike the ball to stop the clock and play second and goal from the 10-yard line, and then you have 3 chances and 1 timeout to score from there. So I agree with that sentiment. I don't think – now, having said that, have to go back and watch the replay. I don't know if maybe there were receivers across the middle that were just well covered, if Carr was under too much pressure to let those routes develop or to see them. The first down play was a throwaway. The second down play, I don't know if it was exactly a throwaway, but he overthrew Michael Thomas by so much that I think Carr may have been throwing that away too. He was under pressure, and Thomas was not open. Third down, he tried to force one in the back of the end zone, and then fourth down again to Thomas right here, just to my right on the 2-yard line, and that ball was picked off. Just blanket coverage, never really had a chance to get that touchdown. Had another comment, Jimmy Graham underutilized, no excuses. Look, I'll be honest, I don't think that was Terry. I don't think Jimmy Graham is the difference in this one. I just don't. I mean, maybe if you're on the 1 or 2 and you'd like to see Graham go in there and get a chance at a jump ball. Jimmy Graham at this stage in his career is not the type of guy who's going to get you big gains downfield, who's going to beat tight coverage in a late game situation. That's not his game. I mean, he's 40 years old. He's a backup tight end to Foster Moreau. So I do think you can criticize the lack of use of tight ends in general. And I know Jawan Johnson is hurt, but Foster Moreau, I think, only caught 1 pass today, only a couple last week. He did catch a touchdown up in New England. But the Saints are not really looking to their tight ends at all. And that was something that with the Raiders, Derek Carr loved to do. Darren Waller was his favorite target for many years there in Las Vegas. And we just haven't seen the tight ends get utilized in this offense. So does that go back to play calling, to the Pete Carmichael discussion? Sure, I think that's a fair criticism. And so that's where we're at here on the Saints Insider Postgame Show. A little bit more to come. Texans 20, Saints 13 is your final. Let's take a quick break here on the Saints Insider Postgame Show, brought to you by Tulane Doctors, and we'll have Luke Johnson and Rod Walker with us right after this.
We are Tulane Doctors. Physicians and scientists working side by side to advance academic medicine. We give our community access to the best possible medical remedies, developing state-of-the-art treatments to improve quality of life, address public health crises, and cure disease. All in passionate pursuit of our mission to provide inspired patient care for generations to come. Tulane Doctors. The future of medicine is here.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider Postgame Show, sponsored by Tulane Doctors. Zach Ewing live here in Houston at NRG Stadium, where the New Orleans Saints lose 20-13 to the Houston Texans. Joined by Luke Johnson, Saints beat writer for the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com. And Luke, you've just emerged from what you said was a very unhappy Saints locker room.
Yeah, they were very upset with the performance they put out there for everybody today. I think they know. They think they're a much better team than they've been showing right now, but the reality is they're 3-3. They haven't looked good in their 3 losses, and they're kind of having to reckon with the fact that they might think they're a playoff team and a team that can win the division and maybe have a chance to make a playoff run, but they got to start playing like one. And the words Cam Jordan used, and we'll mute the bad language. He said we got to get our stuff together. Which is it's an absolute fact about this team right now. They're vastly underperforming according to their own expectations, according to a lot of our expectations.
There's no more magnified area of execution in the NFL than when you get in the red zone. And the Saints today 0 for 3 in the red zone. And it was really worse than that because the last drive's the 24. I think you said 7 times inside the 40, only get 1 touchdown. They were able to move the ball. 430 yards wins you games in the NFL.
Yeah.
But not if you can't finish those drives.
Yeah, it's the money area of the field, man. And we thought maybe they'd gotten it fixed last week in New England. They went 3 for 3 to start the game there, and obviously the last one they were kneeling down, so they ended up finishing 3 for 4. You're like, okay, maybe they got something going here. They got Michael Thomas involved last week, and he was kind of their chain mover guy. And then they go back out here this week and lay another egg in the red zone. And yeah, points are absolutely at a premium in the NFL in any week. But when you're playing with a defense like the Saints defense, even though they were kind of off their game, especially in the first half today, they held a pretty explosive offense to 20 points today. That should be more than enough to win you a game. And it should have been enough for the Saints today, considering the way they were moving the ball. But this is a problem that has cropped up for them all season long. So they've been really atrocious in the red zone, and it's killing them. They shouldn't be a 3-3 team if they were able to execute in the red zone. But outside of take that New England game away, what they were 0 for 3 today.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 out of their 5. You take away the New England game, they're 4 for 15 scoring touchdowns in the red zone in their other games. That's a recipe for losing football games, and it's why they're sitting where they are right now.
Let's talk about that last series. Saints get to the Texans 24. After all the failures, they still have a chance to win this game, or at least send it to overtime. They had, I want to say it was 43 seconds when that series started. They had 1 timeout. They throw to the end zone, or almost to the end zone, all 4 times. Was there any discussion about the play calling there and the idea there instead of maybe lopping off a first down and going from there?
Well, there was a question asked about that, but really I think the thing they kept coming back to, and we saw this, you could see it, just you and I could see it watching the game. You could see it on the TV broadcast. There were miscommunications all over the place today. Guys not being where they were expected to be. The Saints even bailed themselves out on one of them where it looked like Derek Carr thought Rashid Shaheed was running it out, and Shaheed ran it out and up, and Carr threw it, and it should have been a pick 6. They got bailed out, and they scored a touchdown 2 plays later. But, I mean, we saw this stuff crop up over and over again. It cropped up down here, right around here, where they were threatening to score, and then they ended up having a grounding penalty. And after the play, Carr is looking at Michael Thomas, making hand gestures, and this is something that kind of happened throughout the game today. I think it happened down there in clutch, the clutch moments of the game.
Yeah.
They had the ball at the 24-yard line with 35 seconds left, and they had 4 straight incompletions. And with the game on the line, chance to go at least tie the game, and if they're feeling saucy, take the lead. But
yeah,
and you can't talk about this game also without talking about the 2 missed field goals, one of which was a 29-yarder. We were out here watching. There's a bunch of people out on the field doing a post-game NFL experience, and this kid just hit like a 25-yard field goal out here, and you hit a 29-yard field goal. Yeah. The game is completely different.
Right.
They're not going for it on 4th and 2, and they can kick a field goal to make it a 1-score game, a field goal game. Then they can kick a field goal at the end of the game. It's just, their errors just like built up over and over, and it compounded on themselves, and it made everything kind of pointless at the end.
Defense held the Texans to 3 points and 59 yards in the second half.
Yeah.
A lot of that is the Texans, the last half a quarter, were just trying to kill clock, sure. But the defense played well enough to win. I thought special teams and offense let them down. At some point, kind of going back to your original point and looking forward, because this team's got another game here in 4 days, playing the Jacksonville Jaguars on Thursday night. At some point in the NFL, you are what your record says you are. And this team has faced the weakest schedule in the NFL, and it's 3-3. So I don't like it. It just feels like they're constantly at these forks in the road, and they start down a good path and then cross over to the bad path and just can't. We talk about consistency in our weekly Saints Insider shows. There is none.
Yeah, there's none. And the only thing that's really consistent, you can pretty much bank on this defense to come out and at least give you an effort that will allow you to win a game if your offense is playing okay. But like there's no consistency to speak of on the offensive side of the ball. And I'll be really curious to see if this performance is enough to kind of nudge them to consider making some pretty big changes, whether that's on from a personnel standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. And Dennis Allen hinted at it a little bit He never gave any specifics, even when pressed further on it. But the reality is that they cannot expect to be relevant at all in this league when the only consistency they have is that they are a bad offensive team.
Yeah,
you can't win games in 2023 in the NFL when all you're relying on is your defense to win you games.
It's interesting you mentioned the changes because we saw changes with just before we let you go on the offensive line to start this game.
Yep.
Trevor Penning benched. James Hurst slides over to left tackle. Andres Pete was hurt, and still they went with this move and had Max Garcia at left guard. But then that all kind of goes haywire because James Hurst gets hurt. Saw him in a walking boot here a few minutes ago. Clearly not going to be able to play this week either. And so you figure that means Penning is still in the starting lineup. We'll find out about Andres Pete. Ryan Ramczyk left with a concussion in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, they are in a bad spot on the offensive line.
What do you think happens there?
I don't know, man. I wish I had a really good answer for you, for Saints fans on this, but they're in a absolutely dire strait right now in the offensive line. I asked Dennis Allen after the game about Penning. He said he wanted to try to give him a chance to sit back and get off the field and learn from watching and let him learn that way, because their whole plan was like to just kind of throw him into the fire and learn with the reps. That was their whole thing going into the season, and that changed. It wasn't working in their eyes. They decided to try another route with it, but he's going right back into the fire. And who knows who's going to be starting at right tackle next week if Ryan Ramczyk can't go. Andres Pete was emergency in the truest sense of the word today, because they weren't going to play him in the game unless they had no other offensive lineman to go to. So it's just they're in a really tough spot. I mean, the end of the game was Cesar Ruiz at right tackle, Nick Saldiveri at right guard, Max Garcia at left guard, and Trevor Penning at left tackle. That is two guys from their original week one starting offensive line playing where they started at, and one of those guys was benched this week. Right. So
this week,
it was. They're in a bad spot there, and that's obviously when we're talking about the Saints team needing to find some consistency on offense. It's like the last place you want them to be trying to figure stuff out and having to sign guys off the street. They're in a really, really bad spot.
And a bad week for a Thursday night game, too. So they got Jacksonville coming up. He's Luke Johnson, Saints writer for the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com. This is the Saints Insider Postgame Show brought to you by Tulane Doctors. We'll let Luke go get to work, take a quick break, and be right back with Times-Picayune columnist Rod Walker right after this.
We are Tulane Doctors. Physicians and scientists working side by side to advance academic medicine. We give our community access to the best possible medical remedies, developing state-of-the-art treatments to improve quality of life, address public health crises, and cure.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider Postgame Show live from NRG Stadium in Houston. I'm Zach Ewing, joined now by Rod Walker, NOLA.com columnist for New Orleans sports, including the Saints, who lose 20-13 today to the Houston Texans. And Rod, the Saints the last couple of years have specialized in frustrating losses, but this one's right up there with any of them, I think.
Without a doubt. You see a game like this, I actually took a picture of the stats on the scoreboard a few minutes ago, and just when you look at those numbers, I mean, it's a game you're supposed to win, and they just could not get the ball in the end zone, which has kind of been an issue all season for this team.
The last series we've been talking about a lot, and I'll ask your opinion about it. The Saints get first down at the Texans 24, I believe 43 seconds and one timeout. They throw the ball to the end zone all four, or to the 2-yard line last time, but essentially to the end zone all four times. 3 incompletions, then the interception at the end. Should they have done something different? I mean, it's easy to say in hindsight, like they should have done something differently, but do you take issue with that play call?
I didn't really like it. I just thought they could have, I thought they had enough time to maybe, nickel and dime down the field a little bit more, but they were going for the kill shot, and I don't think most of those plays weren't even like, they weren't very close against them. Like it wasn't like, oh, they almost had a touchdown. It just wasn't good. Right. It wasn't good, and that should be concerning for this team, and especially a team that struggled like they did all afternoon. they make some big splash plays every now and then and make you think, oh, this offense is really good, but it's no good if you're not getting in the end zone.
And I'll just take one more point that kind of just occurred to me. If let's say you take one of those kill shots and you get it on first or second down. Okay, you've tied the game now. You could go for 2 if you want. You've tied the game now, but you've also left the Houston Texans 30 seconds and a couple of timeouts to try to get their own field goal. So it's not very good clock management either, besides the fact that none of those plays, as you said, were even close to, oh man, they just missed it. Or if you just catch that pass and that ball's thrown a little bit more outside, none of that. I mean, these plays had never had any chance of working.
It's almost like they were just throwing something against the wall and hope something sticks, and nothing stuck today. And as a result, this team is sitting at 500 right now. And this is a game that, I've kind of talked about it. I thought this was a game when the schedule first came out, I thought this was a sure win. As the season went along, I thought it was a toss-up. And I actually picked the Texans to win because I had a feeling that I just thought that game last week against New England they looked good, but I just thought New England was so bad. And I think we saw today that the Saints still aren't where we thought they were based on last week was just a kind of a mirage for this team, I feel like.
Hey, you picked 23-20 Texans. You needed just another field goal on the Saints. I have to say, and you got to check out our Saints Insider podcast on Fridays for our predictions. I had Texans 19-13 and the Saints scoring late to win the game. Very, very close, but ultimately not all that close because the Saints could never get the ball in the end zone. 7 trips inside the 40-yard line. They get only 13 points out of those 7 trips. That can't happen.
Right. And not just that. You have to look at those Blake Grupe missed field goals. I mean, he missed 2 field goals coming off of a really good week when he was the NFC's Special Teams Player of the Week. And he didn't look like that at all today. I mean, he struggled mightily. And if he makes those field goals, the Saints could, they'd be going for a go-ahead field goal to win the game late, possibly. So he struggled today.
A couple of big picture things. First off, the offensive line. You got a game Thursday night this week, and Ryan Ramczyk's out with a concussion. Usually these guys in the concussion protocol don't come back in a week, certainly not in a short week. James Hurst is in a walking boot. He's not coming back. Trevor Penning was benched and then came back in the game. You have to watch the game again, watch the film. He looked okay. Andres Pete could have played today only in an emergency with a groin injury. So you've got an offensive line that is all kinds of messed up right now.
They are. That's really not good coming off of a short week. They play on Thursday night. I know Trevor Lawrence, I think he got hurt today. So, the Saints catch a break there, I guess, if he's not able to go. But, yeah, this offensive line, which has been a concern, they struggled the first 3 weeks of the season, improved those previous 2 weeks. They were okay today. I don't know how many times Carr got sacked today, but I thought the offensive line, for the most part, did okay today. I do remember Trevor Penning just getting steamrolled on one play and ended up tripping. I don't know if it was Will Anderson.
Had a holding call, too.
Yeah, I mean, he had Eric McCoy had a holding call. So this offensive line still has some issues, and they got to get it fixed. But I don't know if the offensive issues today were strictly on the line. I feel like there was just some miscommunication. There was a play when Derek Carr and Michael Thomas didn't connect, and you saw Carr talking to Thomas. And I don't know where the miscommunication was, but there were some issues today. And I saw Derek Carr make a couple of throws that the receiver just wasn't there. And you're like, where was he throwing the ball to? So there's some miscommunication going on also with the quarterbacks and receivers, and they're going to have to get on the same page.
So clearly some frustration, some injuries, all sorts of things going on for this team with just 3 days to figure it out before they play again on Thursday. So we'll end it here. And by the way, Derek Carr was sacked twice today. So That's a number you can live with. But it's all the other things. It's the holding calls. It's not getting a push in the running game. And they actually ended up running. I haven't mentioned this yet. Alvin Kamara at 68 yards, 3.6 yards per carry, not great, but you are able to at least move the sticks a little bit with him. Probably too many negative plays, too many times when he got pushed back a couple yards. Yeah. But let's end it here with this, Rod. Big picture, team's 3-3, and we keep yo-yoing, thinking, this team, they're about to get going and they're about to go on a run, and look at how easy the schedule is, and the Saints should run roughshod over the NFC South. And then we yo-yo back to they can't do anything right, fire the coach. And the truth is the answer probably lies somewhere in between, but the Saints are going to have to figure out which one it is.
Yeah, I think what we've kind of figured out through 6 weeks is this is just a kind of average NFL team. They're not with the elite teams like the 49ers and the Eagles. And they're probably not the worst team in the league, but I think they're just an average football team, and the defense is good enough to win some games. But, this is probably what we're going to see. This yo-yo that you're talking about, I think it's going to go on for the next 10 weeks left. No, 11 weeks left. 11 games left.
11 games
left. I think we'll continue to see that because I just think that's what this team is. They're not going to be able to – the offense won't find an identity. This is just who they are, I think. I don't think they're going to all of a sudden just say they're clicking now. this is who they are.
The Jaguars, the first place team in the AFC South. The Saints play them on Thursday. After that, they get the Colts, who are playing a backup quarterback, struggling. The Chicago Bears, who are struggling. Justin Fields got hurt today. Minnesota Vikings are struggling after that. Justin Jefferson's hurt. There's still a path for this to work. But the Saints have so many of their own problems. You got to look inwards before you can think
Exactly.
about
I think that's the main thing about this team. They're just not good enough to just be better than anybody. There's not a game on the schedule where you say, oh, that's an automatic win, because this team is just not that kind of team anymore. And I know that's kind of hard. That's a hard pill for Saints fans to probably swallow, because they're just so used to this team having these certain games that, okay, you're going to win, but this team is just not like that. This year's team is not.
Yeah, and that's what we have. This team just has not found it yet. Could not find the end zone today, and despite outgaining the Houston Texans by more than 100 yards, the Saints fall to the Texans 20-13 today. This is the Saints Insider Postgame Show. We're brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Thanks to Rod Walker, Times-Picayune columnist Luke Johnson, who joined us earlier, and Zoe Collins-Rath, our producer. We'll see you on Tuesday for the Saints Insider Podcast this week on a short week, and be back for the postgame show after Thursday night's game against Jacksonville. Thanks to each and every one of you for watching, commenting, and leaving your questions. And stick with us on this same YouTube channel for the Saints Insider Podcast on Tuesday.